You're tuned into the Spot Up Pod, the official podcast of the Spot Up Shot newsletter. I'm your host, Paul Garcia. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Spot Up Pod. So since I last recorded a week ago, the San Antonio Spurs had completed 2 regular season games. The season had just started. So since then, I want to go through a rundown of the last 4 games for the Spurs that they played in this past week. Do a quick little rundown here. All right, so let's go back to a week ago on Monday. The Spurs lost by 5 to the Houston Rockets. It was the second game against the Rockets in San Antonio, where the Spurs won that first meeting. Then they lost the second meeting by 5. Houston was favored by 2.5 in this game. So this Houston led pretty much the entire game. They did lead by as many as 21 points, but the Spurs did fight back and get the game down to crunch time, but Houston still held on for the 5-point win. Then we go on to Wednesday. The Spurs are on the road at OKC, and the Thunder win this game by 12 points. The Thunder were favored here by 12.5 points. It was pretty close in the first quarter, but then from there, the Thunder took control of the second quarter. They led by as many as 19 points. And pretty much with the Spurs having a back-to-back in Utah the next night, Coach Pop pulled the starters midway through the fourth quarter. So that game was pretty much decided pretty early. Then on Thursday, on the second night of a back-to-back, it was actually Halloween night. The Spurs are in Utah on the road on the second night of back-to-back, and they win this game by 18 points. A very impressive win for San Antonio, even though I know the Jazz haven't won a game this season. So the Spurs were favored by 2 points in this game, despite being on the second night of a back-to-back, and a big reason for that was because Jazz star Lauri Markkanen was out of this game. I think what back spasms was the injury. So in this game, the Utah actually led pretty early. They led by 11 points early in the first quarter. The Spurs, though, fought back and they took control in the second half, and they led by as many as 20 points, and they held on for the 18-point win. They won pretty comfortably here on the road at Utah, and that was actually the first double-digit deficit that the Spurs have come back from this season in that win over Utah. So that was again on Thursday. And then the most recent meeting for the Spurs came on Saturday. They were back in San Antonio. They were hosting the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they won by 10 points. The Spurs did. Minnesota was favored by 3.5, but they came into some challenging circumstances. They were on the second night of a back-to-back after playing the previous night against Denver in a game that they won against the Nuggets, where the Wolves actually, had to come back in the final few minutes there, and so they really, and then I think their flight didn't get until 4 a.m. in San Antonio. So it was a full Wolves roster, available to rotation players, but they were a little tired there, you can tell. And so it was close in the first half. The Wolves tried to hold on with the Spurs, but they just quite couldn't. The Spurs took control in the second half, and they led by as many as 19 points. And then basically with like 6 minutes left or 5 minutes left, Chris Finch, the coach from the Wolves, pulled his starters, and so the Spurs held on for the win. And so the Spurs actually did pretty good here these last 4 games. They were Vegas said they were supposed to go 1-3, and it said they defied those odds and they went 2-2. So they are on a 2-game winning streak at 1 consecutive games for the first time this season, and they are 3-3 now on the season. They do have another game on Monday on the road at the Clippers, who are going to be without Kawhi Leonard. All right, so what I've done here is my next topic. So again, that was just a quick rundown of the last 4 games since I last recorded an episode of the Spot Up Pod. Now what I'm going to do is talk about the team overall in some different categories, and then from there I talk about some individual players through 6 games of how they're performing. And I do want to warn too about if I get into stats here that it is just a 6-game sample size. It's usually better to start talking when you really dig into data after like a 20-game sample size. That's a pretty good picture of what a team is and who the players, how they're performing early on in the season. So let's just talk about what numbers we do have though. So one of the strengths for the Spurs early on, as we've seen in these first 6 games, is their team defense. They've been playing really good defense, picking up from where they left off last year. That's something that Coach Pop said they have done. I do want to note that the stats I'm using are from cleaningtheglass.com, and the reason why I like to use Cleaning the Glass's stats is because they do take out the what we call the garbage time. So again, they're really just all those competitive minutes is where their data is coming from, and so that's why I do like to rely on Cleaning the Glass here. So first of all, the Spurs have a top 5 defense right now through 6 games. They are actually 4th in defensive rating, according to Cleaning the Glass. They have the 5th best effective field goal percentage of holding the opponent to just 51% effective field goal percentage. So again, effective field goal percentage is tying in the value of the 3-point shot with the other shots, the 2-point range shots. And so the Spurs are doing a great job here, especially interior. I mean, teams are really struggling against them to score inside. Obviously, they have Wemby, they have good rotations going on right now. They really cramp the paint for the opponent. They're really contesting a lot of shots. It's really more so their issues on defense come from more opponent fast break break scoring in games where the Spurs are struggling to take care of the ball. And then also, certain teams that have really good high volume 3-point shooters, such as the Thunder, who had Lou Dort, who was just, knocking down spot up threes. Also, a team like the Rockets have Jalen Green, who comes off of screens, and Fred VanVleet, who can make threes. So it really depends a lot too on the matchups that they're playing. But overall, they have the fifth best effective field goal percentage on their defense. Turnover percentage isn't too high. I mean, it's about league average, not too bad. There was a good game against Utah where they really applied pressure. The Spurs did. They actually got, I think it was 16 or 17 steals in that game, or 13 steals. I don't remember the number. It was definitely double digits. I don't want to say a number out there, but it was definitely a really good night for them in the steal department. Really applying pressure, really picking off passes and taking the dribbles away from the Jazz guards in that game against Utah. But overall for the season, they're about league average and forcing the opponent into turnovers. They're doing a great job on the boards. I know early on in their first few games, they did have a little bit of an issue rebounding, especially that game against Dallas to start the year. But overall, though, they're doing a pretty good job here. They're 10th in opponent offensive rebound percentage. So again, they're taking care of the board. And then they're doing a great job. And one of their principles that a coach pop defense always has, which is not putting the opponent on the free throw line. They're 8th here. So again, a top 10 team here in opponent free throw rate. They're not putting their opponent on the line much. And then this is just something that I've seen overall, and these numbers do reflect it. It's their half court defense. I mean, like I said, if they're turning the ball over in a game, it's easier for the team to get out, the opponent to get out and have fast break scoring against them. But when they're taking care of the ball, the Spurs are able to play are able to slow down the other team, which means that other team now has to score against them in the half court, and that is becoming very difficult for opponents. We do see here that they have the 4th best half court defense according to Cleaning the Glass. Teams are only scoring 88.6 points per 100 possessions. So again, when it becomes a half court battle here, I mean, the Spurs' defense really comes to light here. They make it tough for teams to kind of get into different rotations. They have different schemes that they can use, whether they want their bigs like Wemby or Sochan kind of switching on guards or wings. They could have them drop and pick and roll. They can have them hedge and recover. There's all sorts of different things that they can do. And they have, just more size out there, with Sochan being a versatile player who can play, he can defend guards. He can play interior. You got Wemby out there who can kind of switch back and forth. And then they have, Julian Champagne's doing his job defensively. They have Stephon Castle coming off the bench. Just have a lot of good defenders. Even a player like Chris Paul, I know he's older at 39 years old. There's times when he's actually doing a pretty good job with steals and deflections and things like that. He's being very active on the defensive end. So that's one of the highlights for the Spurs early on to start the year, is that their defense is very good. And even if we look at their numbers, if you just throw away that one Dallas game, the first game, that's the only team, Dallas, that has scored over 106 points. I mean, that has scored 107 or more points. They actually put up 120 on the Spurs. But other than that, even in all these losses against like Oklahoma City and against Houston, the Spurs have held those teams to 106 or fewer points. So again, defense has definitely been the highlight for the Spurs. And this is going to be a very this is going to keep, if this becomes a real thing, by game 15, 20, the sample size still shows that they're a top 10 defense, then this is a real thing for two things. One, like this team is always going to be into games. I mean, they're going to be in games. It's not going to be easy to defeat them on a nightly basis. And then two, this is going to definitely help Wemby's defensive player of the year candidacy, because that's one of the things that was one of the knocks last year why Rudy Gobert won the award. It's like when you look at the Spurs' overall defensive numbers, I think they were like 21st. And so now, the voters aren't going to have anything to say against Wemby if he's putting up these defensive stats that he's doing, plus he has a top 5 defense now. So again, that has definitely been one of the early signs for the Spurs, is that their defense is very good. They're really picking up communication-wise, rotation-wise, where they left off last year. Like I said, if a team gets into the half-court battle with the Spurs, they are having a tough time scoring the basketball against them. So now that I talked about the really good stuff, which is the defense for the Spurs, if you've been watching the games, you know that offense has kind of been the opposite for the Spurs. They really had a tough time on the offensive end. Just again, based on numbers that we see right now, I know that Devin Vassell is going to make his return to the team pretty soon here, which he should help in different areas. But first, I just want to talk about what the team looks like right now without Vassell, and this is what we see. So they have the 27th ranked offense according to Cleaning the Glass, only scoring 107.3 points per 100 possessions. Shooting wise, effective field goal percentage is also 23rd, 52% accuracy in terms of effective field goal percentage. It's really the 3-ball that's really hurting them a lot, where they're struggling to make either open shots or semi-contested shots. So the 3-ball is definitely a huge issue for them, and that's the reason why teams get to cramp the inside for them, where they can throw doubles or triples at Wemby. They can kind of rush. They basically play off a lot of the Spurs' shooters or players that are out on the perimeter. And so that's why it becomes very cramped in there. And that's why we did see against some of the good defensive teams like Houston, like OKC, they are able to really make the Spurs turn over the ball. Where the Spurs, that's one of their areas of concern as well, is turnover percentage. They're 27th in this number, turning the ball over 17% of their possessions. I do want to say they've made an improvement in the last 2 games against Utah and also against who was it? Utah and Minnesota. They actually did a good job taking care of the ball in both those games. I think it was like 11 turnovers, season low, versus Utah, and then 13 turnovers versus Minnesota. Now, I do want to mention that those 2 teams are having Utah's definitely not a good defense. They're a bottom 10 defense, and then Minnesota was a good defense last year, but they're not quite at that level right now. When I looked at their numbers today, they were actually 19th in defense. So again, I don't know if that's a real thing yet, that the turnover percentage, but you do think that with more continuity, more games, that this team is going to get better at taking care of the ball, especially when they get Trey Jones back as off the bench. They're going to have really good point guard play with Chris Paul, Steph Castle, and Trey Jones kind of running the point there. And so, again, 2 games in, the last 2 games, they've done a great job with this issue, which is turnover percentage. And the reason why the turnovers are so key is because that leads to the opponent, getting turnovers and taking off the other way. And again, open up the fast break scoring, really not letting the Spurs' defense now get into the half court. They're having to play out on the full court. And that's the area, transition defense, is where they're not as good as they are defensively. And I do want to say, too, something that Coach Pop also mentioned was that if they could just play really good defense, not turn the ball over, much, and even in those nights when they have bad shooting nights, which is like pretty much this entire season so far, they're going to be in every game. That's the reason why they were able to beat a team like Minnesota, beat a team like Houston. Also, I know the Jazz aren't very good, but still make an 11-point comeback. It's because they played good defense, they took care of the ball, and even though they still have their shooting woes, that's going to help them. And again, they're going to get Devin Vassell back. One thing also they don't do well on offense is their free throw rate. They really don't get to the line a lot, and you're going to see that number kind of shrink, I think, because this team has made more of an emphasis in the last few games of taking more 3-pointers. Just that game against Minnesota, they actually took 51% of their shots from 3, so more than half their shots are coming from 3. So again, if that continues where they're taking a lot of a high volume of 3s, then of course that's going to have an impact on them getting to the free throw line. They're not going to get there that often. And then just what we see on by the eye test, when you watch the games, they really struggle, the Spurs, in the half court. And so that shows that as well with the numbers, where they are ranked 23rd in half court offense, scoring 92.1 points per 100 possessions. So again, offense has definitely been the issue for this team. And I'm going to talk about some of the players here in a bit. Let me see here. And then just shooting overall, like I said, they've only shot 33% from 3 and one, better than 33% from 3 in just one game. It was that was the second game they won against Houston. They shot, I think, 40% from 3-point range. Other than that, they're shooting below 33% in all those games. And again, that's huge because they're trying to take a lot of 3s, and teams are purposely leaving them open from 3, but they're not even getting over a point per shot on their 3. So again, one player who's definitely going to help in some of that shooting, some of the playmaking on the offensive end will be Devin Vassell. And we don't know exactly when he's coming back. Coach Pop did say there was a good chance he comes back the first week of November. As I looked up the injury report on Sunday evening, when I'm actually recording this, Vassell is still out for that game against the Clippers on Monday night. So again, maybe he makes his return Wednesday at where are they at? They're on the road somewhere. Houston. Okay, they're at Wednesday. They're on the road at Houston. Thursday they return to San Antonio against the Portland Trailblazers. So I think maybe that's probably the better chance of where Vassell plays Thursday, or if not Saturday, they're also at home. I forgot who they play, but they have a home game. Oh, the Jazz. So again, if everything goes well for Vassell, and it goes according to what Pop said, that he should be back the first week of November, then again, there's 3 games after the Clippers game this coming week where maybe they get Vassell back, and of course he's going to help out the offense a little bit. But some of these other players who are struggling to shoot the ball, that's just the Spurs. That was one of the things that a lot of the players talked about was really working on their shot on the off season and really trying to see where that goes. And obviously early on in the season, it's not quite where maybe that they were projecting that it would go. All right, so now I want to talk about a few of the starters for next topic here. And so again, not getting too much into the weeds here of individual stats. I'm just going mainly off base stats because again, I want to let the players get more than like 100 shots before I start looking at shot data and things like that. And again, it's only been 6 games. But let's first talk about what are the go-to players for the Spurs. This is Wemby. So in all 6 games, his averages are 18 points on 14.8 shots. I apologize. 14.8 shots, shooting 43% from the floor. He's getting to the line about 4.2 free throw attempts per night, 92% from the free throw line. And then he's taking the most 3s on the team right now, 6.8 3-point attempts, shooting 22% from 3-point range. Now, Two things on this number. We did know that one, he was going to be rusty after not playing pretty much since competitive basketball since the Paris Olympics. He only got to play in 2 halves of the preseason, so his shot, his rhythm is kind of still coming along. He also said that he if defenders give him space, he's going to shoot. He feels like he's going to make those, so he's going to shoot them. He's mentioned how he feels like he needs to be in a rhythm to have a good shooting night from 3. And then Coach Pop also basically has given the green light. He's saying, yes, we want him taking a lot of threes. Obviously, they're not going at a high rate right now, but that's just something to monitor, is that, he's taking the most threes on the team right now, and he's only making 22% of them. You saw what can happen though in like that game against Utah, I think it was, where he made I think 3 or 4 threes in that game. Yeah, it was 4 threes he made, which is a season high. And again, the Jazz were giving him space. Walker Kessler was giving him space from 3, and he was going to take it. Whereas you flip to the next game against Minnesota, Rudy Gobert's giving him space, especially in the second quarter, and he kept taking those threes, but he kept missing them for like 3 or 4 in a row. So again, that's just something to monitor is Victor's shot. But like I said, it's very early in the season. I want to see what his data looks like after 20 plus games. Where is his 3-point percentage at? Where's his volume on threes as well by that point? As far as like scoring inside, there's different games. Against Houston and OKC, they did a great job. Those two teams defensively of scheming for him very well, of putting wings on him. The Rockets put Dylan Brooks on him, and then the Thunder put on Jalen Williams. And what that does is that allows the bigs, Chet Holmgren for the Thunder, whoever the Rockets have, it allows the bigs, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun, it allows them to basically stay on Sochan, and they're leaving those bigs are basically leaving Sochan from open from 3 on the arc, and then that allows those bigs to be second, interior defenders to guard Wemby. Then plus all the wings and guards kind of hound Wemby as soon as he puts the ball on the floor against those smaller players. So he did have a tough night against those two teams. Against Minnesota and Utah, he did a better job of, they kind of guarded him more with traditional bigs. So Minnesota had Gobert guarding him. Utah had Walker Kessler guarding him for most of the game. So against the traditional bigs, he was able to, get involved in pick and rolls, get some baskets near the rim, get his mid-rangers going as well. So he does a little bit better job, as we saw early on so far in the season against the more traditional bigs. He's also grabbing 9.8 rebounds per game. He had a 20 rebound night already this season. 1 steal per game, and then 3 blocks is his average right now in 31 minutes. And then he's also collecting three assists to about 3.5 turnovers. And then, of course, one thing I want to talk about is his 5x5 game. He already has accomplished that in just his 5th game of the season, when the Spurs were on the road on the second night of a back-to-back. He follows up a pretty rough game against OKC where he scored a career low 6 points against the Thunder. He comes back the next night against Utah and almost puts up that 5x5 in 3 quarters. I remember at the end of the 3rd quarter, all he needed was 1 steal and 1 block to get the 5x5 officially. And sure enough, he did it in the 4th. So he ends up with 25 points, 5 blocks, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, and 5 steals in that 5x5. So again, Victor's kind of still getting into a rhythm. He's not quite at that level that he finished at last season, and of course, teams are definitely scheming for him. So we'll see again how much. I'm interested to see how much that his 3-point volume stays that high at 6.8 attempts, and also does his accuracy start to improve a little bit, because right now, like I said, it's pretty rough there at 22%. Next player I want to talk about in the starting lineup is Jeremy Sochan. So he's off to a good start here, like I mentioned last week. He's scoring 17 points a night, 13.8 field goal attempts. He's shooting 51% from the floor. And the reason why his field goal percentage is really good is because he's doing a great job of shooting near the rim. A lot of his attempts, like I've said before, he scores almost nightly. He's scoring in double digits in the paint. And that's because the Spurs are no longer, making him be the point guard. He's able to, set picks for teams, for guards and wings. He's able to crash the offensive glass, kind of be a cutter, do a lot of screening action, things like that, and that's getting him open looks. And even Wemby's done a great job of finding him with alley-oops and things like that. And of course, Chris Paul and his connection has also been really good as well. So he's doing a great job of just, when he's off the ball, trying to score near the rim when he does take shot attempts. One thing the Spurs have done is, as I've seen multiple times, is to try to keep what I said earlier about how the bigs like to stay on Sochan, and they purposely leave him open from 3. So the Spurs are trying to get Sochan involved in actions. They're making him set a lot more screens, a lot more pick and rolls. That way he can be involved, and that way he gets his defender moving, and that player is not just constantly just camped out in the paint waiting for the Spurs, just waiting at the rim just to shut something down. He's also getting fouled a lot, getting 4.2 free throw attempts per game, making 68% of them with the one-handed free throw form. The 3 ball, again, that's kind of the shot that, like I said, the defenses aren't scared of it yet. They're still leaving him open. He's averaging 1.8 3-point attempts per game, and he's making 27% of them. So again, that's not a shot he's going to go to unless he's absolutely has to in a possession. He's played about 32 minutes a night, 8.5 rebounds. He has had a few double-digit rebound games, and then 1 steal per game. And then offensively, and then in terms of ball movement, 3.3 assists to 2.3 turnovers. And then I do want to note how he had a 22-point night against Houston. But like I said, Jeremy's definitely that versatile defender the team really relies on. Where some games, he's guarding more bigs, and then other games he's switching onto a different kind of guards and wings and players like that. So that's Sochan, who's off to a good start to the season. One thing about Sochan too, I forgot to mention this. I do want to see what his numbers look like once Vassell returns, especially on the offensive end, because now that's another high volume shooter who's going to be out there, kind of has more playmaking ability for the Spurs. So I do want to see if Sochan's numbers take a little bit of a dip offensively in terms of the attempts. I think his accuracy will still be good because again, like he shoots a lot near the rim. But that's one thing I am interested to see once Vassell makes his return to the team. Next starter I want to talk about is Chris Paul, who's had a good start to the year here for the Spurs. 11.7 points right now, double digits in points, shooting 8.3 shot attempts per game, and making 50% of his shots. So again, an efficient shooter right now. 5 3-point attempts. So again, higher volume for the Spurs, and then he's making 47% of his threes, so he's doing a great job there. And then doesn't get to the foul line much. As far as minutes, 29 minutes per game, 4 rebounds and 1 steal. And then his assists to turnovers are really pop out here. 8.7 assists to 2.2 turnovers. And he actually had 2 double-doubles in recent games, where against Utah, he finishes with 19 points and 10 assists. And then against Minnesota, he ends up with 15 points and 13 assists. So what I'll say about Paul is that he's really, like I said, the 50% really sticks out to you, his shooting percentage right now. He's doing a great job. He's getting more comfortable in the offense, where, like I've written before on the Spot Up Shot, if you go read the newsletter, it took him a few games, but it almost feels like he's kind of sensed that, oh man, like this team, they go through these major dry spells on the offensive end where they cannot score a bucket. They go through these lulls. And so I feel like he almost like senses that at times in games when he feels like, yeah, he needs to get more aggressive scoring the ball. And so he'll purposely, look for his mid-rangers. Those shots are going in right now at a good rate. He'll go get his mid-rangers. He's not afraid to shoot the 3 ball, especially if it's like a spot up 3 that's open. He's also taken some pull-up 3s whenever the defense goes under on his screens. Like we see here, he's taking 5 3-pointers a game and making 47% of them. And then just something that, like, you can't quantify in the data, but one thing you see is just how he calms things down, like where they might be leading by 12 points and in the fourth quarter, they just got to make it to the last, to not let the game get into crunch time. And so Chris will kind of just slow things down, run out the clock on certain possessions and kind of get one last shot with like 5 seconds or 8 seconds left. So that's one thing you see from him. Obviously, they've won a game in crunch time, then they've lost one with him out there. But again, he's done a great job of that veteran presence of constantly talking to the players, whether he's on the floor or off the floor, you kind of see him talking to refs, talking to the coaches, talking to players over and over again. And so, again, he's kind of showing that veteran leadership, and the players have all talked about how that's just been very impactful for them. And obviously, if you look up his assist, who he's passing to, he obviously finds almost everyone on the floor that's out there with him, but especially Wemby and Sochan. I mean, they're not. When I like to type up the players he passed to and got assists from, and it's like nightly, it's just like Wemby like 3 or 4 buckets, Sochan for 3 or 4 buckets. So yeah, he's done a great job of coming in and playing the point guard role. And now we're gonna have to see how he develops as well. Starting to find Devin Vassell out on the floor whenever Vassell makes his return to lineup. So again, Chris Paul's had a good start to the season, and then the last starter I want to mention is Harrison Barnes. He's averaging double-digit points as well, 11.7 points on 7.8 field goal attempts, making 55% of his shots as well. 3.3 3-point attempts. So again, not a high-volume shooter is Harrison Barnes, making about 40% of his threes though, so an accurate shooter. Doesn't get to the line much. Doesn't really board much. It's about 3.2 boards per game in 30 minutes, and then doesn't really get a lot of assists or turnovers as well. It takes care of the ball. So one thing I'll just say about Barnes is that he's like that veteran who's in there. He's not taking a lot of possessions on the offense. He's more of a read and react player, as he's talked about before, where he's kind of just looking at where can he attack the defense if they're out of step, or is there an angle that he can attack from to kind of get near the rim. A lot of his points do come on the inside near the rim, which is why he shoots 55% from the floor. And then of course the 3 ball, it's more so like that spot up shot. If it's there for him, it's wide open, he's going to take it. Or if it's like a quick release on the break, he'll take it if he feels like he's in a rhythm. And then just something else I'll say is that he too, you can see his veteran presence out there at different times, where Coach Pop's going to him as well at different times in crunch time. And then like in that most recent win against Minnesota, again, the Spurs were up by like 10, 12, 14 points. they need buckets to make sure that the Wolves can't get the game close again and get into crunch time. And Harrison's there, making cuts off the ball, rolling and getting layups. So again, he's also providing his veteran presence there in the starting lineup, and then of course he plays in different kind of lineup combinations as well. All right, so now I want to move to the bench, and I want to talk about two specific players and then just some overall themes regarding the bench. So let's first start off with Keldon Johnson. So he's averaging about 12.7 points off the bench right now, 11.5 field goal attempts, shooting 41% from the floor overall. And then he's taking 5 3-point attempts. So again, at least he's doing what Paul's doing, which is being a higher volume 3-point shooter, but he's also struggling with his 3-point shot, which to open the year, he's only shooting 23% from beyond the arc. He's also aggressive in getting to the free throw line, 2.7 free throw attempts per game, making 81% of his free throws. Let's see. Defensively, he's doing a good job on the boards, and also his energy, his hustle. So 6 rebounds per night and 1 steal per night as well is his average in 28 minutes. And then offense, I mean, as far as ball movement, not really too involved there. We're 0.7 assists and 1.2 turnovers. So again, having a little bit of difficulty there. Like I said, he's still finding his way in the offense. It's kind of difficult for him at different times, especially since he's having trouble with the outside shot. So teams are purposely leaving him open. He still does more so like that physical, driving kind of downhill kind of attacking style. That's how he gets his buckets. A lot of his points do come in the paint, similar to Sochan. He's also more like a read and react player where he likes to, if he has a step on his defender, he's going to drive toward the rim. And like I said, when you look at the 41% accuracy, that's he hasn't been finishing as well at near the rim, but he had a good game against Minnesota where he ends up being the leading scorer for the Spurs with 25 points. And on that night, you could see him finishing very well at the rim. He even went against Rudy Gobert multiple times, either taking him off the dribble and finishing with layups, or even going with jump hooks over Gobert. So again, Keldon's kind of been there as well off the bench, averaging about 13 points per game right now. Again, that's his role, where the Spurs need to be more so like a scorer off the bench, and he's been doing that. Malaki Branham has also been a player who's really improved off the bench. He was, like I said before, he wasn't in the rotation pretty much during the preseason. Blake Wesley was ahead of him in terms of where those two players were at in the guard rotation, and then even the first few games of the season, he really wasn't part of the rotation. But one thing that Branham does that maybe players like Blake Wesley, Stephon Castle have trouble with, and Trey Jones, is that Branham shoots the 3-ball very, at least early on, he's shooting the 3-ball well. So right now off the bench, he's been getting minutes here. He's averaging 9.3 points off the bench, taking 6.3 field goal attempts, making 53% of them. So again, a very efficient shooter right now. 2.7 3-point attempts, again, not high volume, but making 50% of his threes. And then he's also getting to line about 1.5 times per night for 89% shooting from the line. 15 minutes a night off the bench, 2 rebounds, and then passing stats don't look too much too impressive here. 0.8 assists to 1.5 turnovers. He did have 15 points off the bench against Houston and OKC, and like I said, he's pretty much part of the rotation right now, where he's kind of gotten those minutes that Blake Wesley used to have. And so Branham's definitely the fact that he can shoot the 3 right now is what's helping him out. His biggest case, and he's been efficient with the shots he puts up, whether it's in the mid range or putting them up near the rim. He's had some good layup attempts as well, taking his defenders off the dribble. And so Branham's definitely making the most of his time out there, and so he's definitely part of the rotation right now. So this last card that I want to go through, or topic, is let's talk about the bench, just overall themes I've seen. So the players who are getting guaranteed minutes right now off the bench are Keldon Johnson, again, 28 minutes, Stephon Castle, the rookie, 20 minutes, Zach Collins, 13 minutes, and then Branham, 15 minutes. So what I want to say is that, we saw Wesley. He was part of the rotation, the 9-man rotation early on, but now his minutes have really started to get cut here. Defensively, he's still doing what he does, putting pressure on the ball, going out there, rebounding. But it's the fact that offensively, he's not, especially the outside shot. It's just like he's not bringing a lot on the scoring department. That's kind of what they need at times when this team's already struggling to score in the first place, even like with the starters. And so that's why I think you've seen Branham kind of get the edge over Wesley here early on. So he's kind of actually got taken out of the rotation. He didn't play much against Utah, and then against Minnesota, he didn't go into the game until the game was pretty much decided when the Spurs, the final 2 minutes when the Spurs pretty much had that as a win. And then I would say also Mamu, something that I had mentioned early on in the preseason was that, once Zach Collins and Charles Bassey came back, we thought for sure Zach was going to be the backup center to Wemby. And sure enough, that's the case. Zach is the backup center. But what we've seen happen already in a few games is that if Zach's not, performing well in games, whether on the defensive end or if he's struggling, if he's not taking a lot of threes, for spacing, or he's turning the ball over, Coach Pop has already gone to Mamu in certain games. And so Mama was averaging about 6 minutes in the few games that he's played. And again, he's not in the rotation, but he's an option that the Spurs will go to on the nights that Zach is having some difficulties. So again, that's just something to watch, is that Mamu can be one of those players who gets inserted into the lineup in different kind of games. And then I do want to mention, just regarding the bench, is that, there's going to be less minutes soon to go around. And here's why. One, Vassell's coming back, which means Julian Champagny is probably shifting down to the bench. So, Champagny's going to be a player who needs minutes now off the bench. And then also Trey Jones shouldn't be out too much longer. So maybe like one more week, because Coach Pop had originally said about 2 weeks he would be out when he first got injured with that right ankle sprain. So again, that's something to watch as well, is Trey Jones is his injury status as well. He's once he makes his return, he's definitely going to get some minutes. And so that's just something to watch regarding these players, more so off the bench, like Malaki Branham, like Blake Wesley as well. There's going to be other players coming in. So now that kind of wraps up this episode. We look forward to the next episode. So on Monday, what I'll be previewing the next episode, I'll be talking about the Spurs' game on Monday. They play at the Clippers. On Wednesday, they play at the Rockets. On Thursday, they are at home against the Portland Trailblazers. And then on Saturday, they also play the Utah Jazz. So these are all, maybe, let me see. Yeah, I mean, these are all going to be very, very winnable games for the Spurs. Even Houston, would probably be the favorite at home. But, the Spurs have already defeated them once already this season. So that's kind of what their schedule looks like. So make sure that you check out the spotupshot.com. After every game, I write my analysis after each game. And then I'm also doing some different videos, of course, doing the podcast as well. So make sure you check out the spotupshot.com. Thank you, and have a great week. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Spot Up Pod. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a rating on your favorite podcast apps and our YouTube channel. The Spot Up Pod is recorded and produced by Paul Garcia. The music for this episode was written by Vincent Garcia and Paul Garcia. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.